Let me tell you, folks, if you're interested in getting into podcasting like I was, then you need to download the free Anchor app. Now, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now, let me explain. First, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right on your phone or your computer, and Anchor will worry about distributing your podcast for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor to get started. Episode of Every Black Man Has a Story. I'm your host, Black Prospector, and today is a very important episode that we're doing because this is actually the first interview that I did with my uncle, Isaiah. Now, my uncle Isaiah is 74 years old, and I started hitting the record button a little bit late, so forgive me, you missed his age and his name, but other than that, we pretty much got the whole thing on there. Now, before I really get into the backdrop, I just want to say it's kind of a bittersweet moment. I have been looking forward to airing this interview. This is actually the first one that I did, and yet I started out the series with the interview that I did with my father because I felt that my father really was the one I should start with because in actuality, this is obviously his story is one of the most important because it is definitely one that most impacts my life. But there's also another reason that this bit is bittersweet, and that is because within the last few days, found out that I lost another uncle. Now, that's not the uncle that you hear in this interview. I come from a very large family, but I did lose another uncle that actually has a bit of a story with this podcast as well. The uncle that I lost happened to be an uncle that actually was relatively young, in his mid-60s. And this uncle has played a role in my life. And he and I got real close right before I moved from the Midwest. But he ended up being the uncle that really put a passion in me into looking into my family history and getting stories. So he did what many people are doing. He traced a particular side of our family, traced the lineage back, and actually was able to go back, I think, almost a couple hundred years, which, as you all know, black folks know, that's almost unheard of and very difficult to do. And so over the years, we talked about it quite often, and he schooled me on it, and I was actually hoping to one day take it over, but I have to say the amount of time he spent on that was just amazing. And I couldn't do it, especially homeschooling kids as well. But, certainly I know that he would do interviews with family members whenever he would go down south and talk to some of the older family members. And so much of what we're doing here with Every Black Man Has a Story, he ties into that idea of getting the stories that people tell down now before they're gone. And so one regret that I already have with this episode, or I'll say with this show altogether, I regret not getting his story before he suddenly passed away. So I will say, as I tell you every time I get ready to end a show, go and get the stories from the men in your lives. Get the stories from anyone in your life, actually, that you can learn from. But I really want to encourage you to go get the stories of your father and other men in your life. So it's an honor for me to have an opportunity to get the story of my Uncle Isaiah. My Uncle Isaiah is actually the same age as my father, 74 years old. And Uncle Isaiah, I had to really edit this interview, and I ask that you be patient with the two of us. I had to do some filler in myself just because of the pauses. But he has a unique story because my Uncle Isaiah had a stroke. You'll hear when he had that stroke in his life because it's been quite some time after even having the stroke, and he still struggles with his speech. But Of course, I was so glad he did this interview. He didn't really want to. My mother happened to be down there. She kind of talked him into doing it. And I'm so glad that she did. I'm so glad that he took the time to talk to me. And what was really funny is, I told him, hey, don't worry. We'll just talk for 10 or 15 minutes. It'll be all good. And yet we ended up going for about an hour and a half. And I again, this is the value of those stories. Men want to talk about their lives because, quite honestly, we never get to tell our side of the story. Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, I mention him often. Please go follow Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, the work he's doing on black masculinity. And just today I was listening to a video where he even talked about in marriage and fatherhood. Many fathers are going out of the home, and they just hope that one day they'll have the opportunity to tell their kids the story. Not the story that mom told them, not the story mom said of, maybe your daddy left you and he left us and et cetera, because most men don't leave because they just want to abandon their kids. There's always a story behind that. And so, he said many men, they wait for their kids to get older so they can really tell them their story. And sometimes interpersonal relationships, marriages are difficult. And so when a child is young, no one wants to go tell their kid all about their mama because we're all socialized, no matter what, to be on the side of mom. But he says something that I have pointed out for the last couple of years. It is a good day in a man's life when he no longer views his mother as just his mother, but he views her as a woman. And he views her as perhaps his father's wife or his father's girlfriend at one time. That's freeing. That's freeing for him. And you know what? I think that's actually freeing for her as well, because she does not have to be pretentious. She can be herself. But I digress a bit because I'm glad I had an opportunity to talk to my uncle. This is going to be part one of our interview, and we end up getting into something you're going to be a little bit probably surprised about. And that is a question I will leave for you before we begin. So in the brief seconds that we have in the music break before the interview begins, quickly, when did you think sharecropping stopped in the United States of America? You may be surprised that it did not end nearly as early as you thought it ended. Now, without further ado, I want to get into the interview with my Uncle Isaiah. Again, I ask for your patience. There is a little bit of a delay. I tried to edit the delays out as much as possible, but there is a bit of delay with his responses. But again, the fact that he did this interview and he was willing to talk, and the way you start hearing the stories begin to come out and flow from a black man that was raised in the 60s. What was the world like? What did he end up doing before he came up north in the Great Migration, as they call it? And also, how has his life been impacted by this stroke? So sit back and enjoy from yet another black man with a story, my Uncle Isaiah. Go ahead. I forgot to push record. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. You said you went at 17 to Michigan.
Yeah, and at 18, there I was until I was 48 when I retired.
Wow. So. You retired at 48?
Yes.
Wow. How many men did you know that could retire so early at that age?
Not many, but it was just a few. It was a few that went in at 18 and could retire. but I retired at 18. But I'm making a mistake. I retired at 48, but I went in at 18, and there I've spent the biggest portion of my life there at Chrysler.
Looking back, are you glad you went there and stayed for so long of your life? Or looking back, do you wish that you might have done something else, or, you know, maybe gone into something else? How do you look back, you know, at that place, spending 30 years there?
Well, it didn't seem to be 30 years, but I don't. I was people was after me about quitting and going to school, but I told them that I wasn't interested, and I just stayed there, and when I reached, well, I had a stroke when I was 47, but I had enough time in to never go back, because I had the stroke in I think June of '94. So I never did go back to work, but I had enough time with the overtime hours and all that I didn't have to go back. So
now, could you have gone back to work after the stroke if you wanted to?
Yeah, but I had already put in for my retirement beforehand, but I was planning on, say, coming down in Alabama and maybe working a little bit more, but that I never did get to do.
So how was it working at the plant back then? I mean, I know we talk about the Great Migration, and it sounds like you were part of that migration of coming up from Alabama up to the plants in the north. How were you received going into the plant at such an early age?
Well, back then they needed workers. You could get a job anywhere out there at the time, because it wasn't a problem at all.
Wow. Well, certainly I know why you drive Chryslers all the time. So what Chryslers do you have right now? I'm sure you have one, right?
Well, the 2015 Chrysler, that's in my name, so I have to claim it. And the 2004 Intrepid.
Wow. And is the 2015, is that the Chrysler 300?
Yes.
All right. So what was the first Chrysler that you owned?
If I make no mistake, it was a Dodge, I think it was called a 500 convertible.
Oh, what color?
White.
Oh.
White all over.
What engine was in it?
383.
All right. Now, here's the key question. I'm sure you were racing, and now we know the statute of limitations is over, so you won't get in trouble for saying this. I'm sure you had some races in that car. What's the one race you remember in that car?
I remember in the Chrysler, I mean the Dodge. I don't remember racing in that car.
What? I guess it was a big white convertible. You weren't trying to race in that, huh?
Yeah.
Now, I will say the first car I remember you owning, if I remember correctly, it was that white
340 Duster. Do I remember that right?
That was the second one. I had previously owned 69 340 Dark, but I owned it for probably 6 or 8 months. I can't remember now, but I got rid of it and bought a Chrysler Imperial, and I owned that. And then I traded that in and bought the Dodge Dart, which was not the Dart, but the Plymouth Duster.
That's right. That's right. Now, what year was the Duster?
I think it was a 70.
70? All right. All right. Wow. So, of all the Chryslers that you've owned, which one was your favorite?
I would say the Shelby, the Dodge Shelby.
What? Really?
Yes.
Why?
That was a 2.2 with 4-speed, and it was probably the fastest, and it only was a 2.2.
You know, I do remember that car because that was your red one, right?
Yes.
I remember the car for another obvious reason, but the other reason I remember it is because I did go to automotive school for a hot second, and I think a year, and that was the engine that we worked on. We had to learn how to work on an engine class, was that little 2.2, and I know yours had the 2.2 turbo, and
yes.
I later would own, I picked it up for I think I bought that car for $100. It was all rusted out, but it was a 2.2 turbo, but it was the Plymouth Laser, same body style like yours. And the reason why I got it was because I remembered yours. And so, but I never drove one. And when I drove it, I was amazed at how quick that little car was. And it was nice. It just rusted out.
Well, the Laser was, the Dodge Shelby was a little bit, a second or two faster than that Laser was.
Yeah, you got the extra Shelby tweaks, right?
Yeah.
Now let me ask this, how did it feel owning a Shelby when you remember when Shelby was over there doing everything with Ford? Did it seem kind of strange?
Not really, because we had the man from, he came over from Ford, and I think he brought a lot of his stuff with him. I can't think of his name right now. Iacocca.
Yeah, Lee Iacocca.
Yeah.
Yep. So what did you, I know one, but I'll see if you say it. What was your favorite race in the Shelby?
Well, I raced a Vet up there on Grand River when I was in Detroit. I raced a Vet, and that was the most, I guess that was the favorite I ever had, because that guy couldn't beat me no kind of way. I was too fast for him.
You know, I think that's probably why Chevy started putting, they started, because I think for a while in the 70s and the 80s, the Vet was not even as fast as everything else. And then I think Chevy had to go back and really put a big difference between the Vet and the Camaro, because they was getting beat by all the other cars by then.
Yep.
And yet you paying all that money for a Vet.
Yep.
Now, let me ask this. Is it true because I heard it in a rumor mill somewhere. So you tell me if it's true or not. I heard you once lost a drag race at the drag strip because when the Christmas tree dropped, you were messing with your radio when the light went green. Is that true?
I don't remember. To be truthful, I don't remember, but I lost a few at the drag strip. Most of them was with that 340 Duster. Was not the 340 Duster, the 340 Dart, because it wouldn't run when it got hot. I think they call it copper icing or something. I don't know what they call it, but it wouldn't run when you got up, torqued it up and got up in high speed. It would go out.
All right, that makes sense. It's funny. It's like y'all had the same problems that, I know Buick with the Grand National, that was a big problem they had with their V6 turbo. Everybody knew when I was a kid in the 80s, late 80s, if you're going to race one, you don't want to be the first one to race it. You wait till they race like 2 or 3 Mustangs and that turbo get hot, then you can beat them.
Yeah.
Then you can get them. Oh man. All right. That's good. I especially with your Chrysler years, going back down memory lane on the cars you've had, that's something I always like to talk about. So actually, what did you work on primarily at Chrysler? Did you have a particular specialty anywhere on the line? What did you actually do there?
But I was a piston repairman most of the time.
Okay.
I repaired pistons. And 383, 440. Then I went to the 2.2, and I think there's another one came out just before I left, but that was the only. Most of mine was 6s and V8.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, and how do you? And you may not even care, but how do you feel now when you look at knowing what Mopar, Chrysler, Dodge, Plymouth, I mean, how significant those names are, and then they end up being owned by Fiat, and now they're called Stellantis. I mean, does that seem weird to you at all? Do you have any opinion on that at all? Does it irk you? Is it like, hey, change happens? I mean, what do you think about it?
Well, I just put it as change happens because it don't. I don't feel no certain way now as I did back. I say in the 60s and 70s and 80s. I had a strong feeling about Chrysler cars then, but now I don't care.
Did you ever own any other, especially new? Did you ever buy any other new car by any other company?
No.
Wow.
Because what I felt, and I kept the company felt that if you don't buy what you build, then you don't look for nobody else to buy your product. And so if you can't own it yourself, what you if you work there and buying a General Motors product or a Ford product, that's saying something about you too. If you don't buy what you build, so how you expect somebody else to buy the same product?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Wow. Well, hey, I'm sure they are appreciative for you spending 30 years of your life there, because I mean, those were the glory years. I mean, right now in my office, I'm looking at an orange 68 Charger, or actually it's a 69. model car that I bought. And, you know, it's that legacy. I'm looking at, actually, I have a Mopar hat sitting right here on my desk as well. Even though I've always been a Ford guy leaning toward Ford, that those years of Mopar, man, those were the best.
Yep. Absolutely. And I was proud to be a Mopar owner at the time. Now, when now I don't care. What I'm trying to say is, being at 74 years old, I don't care. But then I was, like I'm saying, I've had a stroke, so it's hard for me to come up with words sometimes. Yeah. So.
No worries at all. Yeah, just what you certainly doing well now. So this is great. This is great. So don't worry about it at all. But it is, you know, you actually made me think of a question to change directions here a little bit. You know, now at 74, you look back at the things you used to care about that now you can look back and say, it really wasn't that deep. Are there any other things in your life that you look back at and you say, you know, at the time it seemed to be oh so important, but now at 74 looking back, that really wasn't the most important thing? Any other things like that come to mind?
No more than women.
Well, I told you we talk all about manhood here, so that's fine. Feel free, elaborate. Tell me more.
See, because I didn't intend to get married. I was going to live my life and not get married. And but things change, and so. But I'll just say this: I'll never again get married as long as I live.
Why is that?
Because of the heartaches, and trouble I've had in my life, or so. I don't need no more heartaches, no troubles.
Yeah. What age did you get married?
I think I was. It was in my 30s. I'm not sure. Because what I'm trying to say is a lot of that, because I had the stroke in '94. It's a lot of the memories that I don't even remember nothing about now. And then certain things that from old memories that I can bring up, think about. But you could tell me something now, right today. And 15 minutes later, I've forgotten all about it.
Okay.
And then it's certain things that stick. I don't know what's caused it. Now, I know a man next door. I have yet, he told me his name over and over. But I've yet to remember his name. Because I guess he's been nice to me. And that's something that don't stick out to me. You know what I'm trying to say, the niceness.
Yeah.
If he had did something to me otherwise, then I remember his name.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, well, and okay, so that makes me go back. Growing up in Alabama, and obviously we'll be looking at 74. We're talking the late 40s, early 50s. What was life like for you I've been in Wetumpka, Alabama. What was life like for you growing up? Were people generally nice to you? Do you look back at, what you can remember with your childhood of it being a fun time? Or did you leave at, 17 because you wanted to hurry up and get out of there? How did people treat you as a young man? What was life like as a young man?
Story. If you have that black man in your life and you want his story to be out here, just email me at blackprospector@gmail.com. And of course, like and subscribe to the podcast as well.